Today, I'm excited to chat to Adam Baker, the co-founder and CEO of Dealpad. With a rich background in scaling and exiting multiple B2B SaaS companies, Adam has spent over 2 decades building businesses from the ground up and generating millions in revenue. At Dealpad, he's currently transforming the software sales space by giving sales teams the tools to align with their buying committees and generate insights for deal execution with AI. As a founder, active mentor, and investor in early-stage software companies, he has vast experience across multiple industries and growing go-to-market teams effectively. Adam, thanks so much for joining me on the podcast. It's long overdue.
Yes, it is, really. How are you doing? Thanks, and great intro. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's quite an intro. Well, look, I mean, we have a lot of things to cover, and I know obviously you've been working with you at Dealpad. There's a lot that we can cover, and with your previous companies as well. I think a good place to start is talent. Obviously, you growing Dealpad to where it is today, as well as all of your previous companies. You often mention on LinkedIn the importance of hiring the right talent for the company's growth stage in particular. How should founders, or I guess CROs, or just C-suite in general, assess whether a potential hire's experience matches the revenue stage of their company? Have you got any stories that, of examples that this has gone right or wrong for you in the previous companies that you've done?
Yeah, look, I think firstly, this is the most important topic that we can talk about today. Over and above any kind of sales processes and tactics, strategy, if you don't get this right, the rest isn't going to work very well. And so hiring for the stage you're at is absolutely critical. And what that basically means is that if you're at $1 million revenue and you want to grow to 5 million, you need to hire somebody that's been on that precise journey. You don't want somebody that has been at a scrappy bootstrap, 0 revenue startup and left them at 500K. You don't want somebody even that's been at a 5 million startup and join them at 3 million because there's a gap. They weren't there between the 1 and 3. You need people that have been on your exact journey so they can see what's in front of them. They know the challenges. They can navigate through all of the things that they've seen come up. Ideally, I want someone that's done it twice at least, because once could be a bit of an outlier. If they've gone through that same process twice, there are going to be things that they wouldn't have seen the second time they saw the first, but there will definitely be commonalities and things that they've repeatedly seen on both occasions. And that for me is really important. So if I can find people that have been on the precise journey I'm about to go on and have done it twice, that's a big tick. And I think, the journey I'm about to go on is also very important. I don't want people that have been on the journey we're in because, it's probably going to be all right for 6 months, but actually, is it going to help me move from 1 to 5? Probably not. And so, but that's the first thing, very, very important. Some stories, I've got lots of stories where it's gone wrong. Where in my first company, I was at Intuit, left Intuit, set my company up, and about 12 months later, fired who was at the time my manager at Intuit to come in, and he just sucked balls. He was terrible. And the reason I hired him is because I liked him. He was super smart, very strategic, very high level operator. And we got on really well. And even though the relationship at the time was he managing me, we had quite a kind of flat line, kind of hierarchical structure. It was good, but he was terrible working for us because he was used to having everything laid on. He was used to picking the phone up and Intuit getting in through the door. He was used to having materials and processes and tools. He wasn't used to being super scrappy and resourceful, and it just didn't work. And he admitted it as well. And so I think that was definitely a big learning for me. You can get sucked in and excited by having somebody that's been at Google or Facebook or, wherever. But if you're not a Google or a Facebook and you're way further down the chain than that, I genuinely don't think it's going to help much. I would bet 9 times out of 10 that hiring somebody that had been in a couple of scrappy startups, if you're in a scrappy startup, would be a better hire for you over the next few years than hiring somebody that's been at Google. Even though, it doesn't look as good on your investor deck, it will be better for your business. And so, just making sure that the people that you're hiring have the right experience. And then you can dive in a bit more and go a bit more granular. And so, if I'm hiring a sales role, I want to make sure that if I've got a mid-market motion and I'm selling to, I don't know, let's say I've got a mid-market motion, I'm selling into enterprise with half a billion revenue, and our ACV is 10K and I want to get it to 40K. I want somebody that's done that. I want somebody that's sold into mid-market at around 40K annual contract value. If they're selling 200K deals and they're used to kind of farming those deals and not having any urgency, or if they're used to doing transactional sales and, it's 2K here, 5K here, lots of deals going on, they're not going to be the right fit for me. So it's not just about, can I find people that would be on the journey that we're about to go on? It's, can I find people that have done what I need them to do? And so it makes hiring really difficult. It makes the choices of hiring difficult. And it forces you at some point to take a couple of bets, but you can't take too many. And, sometimes those bets work out, sometimes they don't. But if you have a framework of who you want to hire, like really map out the DNA for every role you want to hire, you hire eight people like that, and two in every 10 you don't, you take a bet on, you should be all right. But if you're doing it the other way around, it could be a disaster.
Thinking about trying to find people that have gone on that journey, how important is industry and what you're selling with the experience of those individuals? And also, I guess a follow-up to that would be, for those that have done it multiple times, I can imagine that they are sought after and it's quite competitive to get those individuals in your company, especially early stage. What are some of the takeaways from you doing that for other founders trying to get top talent?
Yeah. So I think, the experience and vertical experience depends on what kind of business you have, how technically complex that product is, that solution is, that service is you're selling. So, I wouldn't want to drop somebody with no vertical experience into a blockchain role, for example, selling blockchain or something really deep tech, because having to explain that and talk to people about that problem, if you don't understand it, could be quite. And the way that I would always measure it is, how technical are the people we're selling to? So can I come in here and have an outcome value oriented discussion and show them that we can solve a problem and play back some value to them? If I can do that, then I don't really need somebody that's massively technical. If in order for us to get this deal across the line, we need to sit in front of hedge fund managers and talk to them about some kind of really deep blockchain thing, I mean, you can tell I would never do that. Then I would want somebody that could have those conversations, right? Because otherwise they'll be shut down before they even took. I think it depends on how tech you're selling to are, how complex the product is that you're selling. It's always better to have somebody that knows the industry, but I would index myself personally when I'm hiring. I will index towards stage. Have they done the stage we're about to go in? And have they sold, or have they written marketing copy, taken something to market, or have they, whatever it is they're doing, have they built product in a company like ours before? That I would always index towards that. And then if they've got the vertical experience, it'll be another big tick. Flipping towards, I guess, sales today in current market, at least from what I'm seeing on LinkedIn, the conversations that I'm having, and I'm sure you can agree, a lot of companies are facing pipeline generation challenges, lead gen challenges. And I know you've spoken quite a bit on LinkedIn about advocating on focusing on the deals in your pipeline, and how with difficulties at the top of the funnel mean that the deals in your pipeline are much, much more important. What specific actions should sales leaders take to get more deals across the line with the leads that they already have? Yeah. Well, look, it's a really pertinent kind of topic at the moment, because most companies that I talk to are focusing on top of the funnel, they don't have pipeline coverage to deliver quotas, and they're worried about next year and how they're going to deliver that. At the same time, there are deals in their pipeline they're not winning. And I think there's a problem in fueling your pipeline with deals to get coverage that you're not closing. Because what actually happens, two things happen. One is kind of, a pain. One is fundamentally damaging to the business. The pain is that you're not going to be able to forecast very well, and those deals are going to start to slip because you haven't really gone through a rigorous process of managing those deals. You haven't really thought about qualifying them very well, and you're not going to be able to kind of predict revenue very clearly, and that's a problem. The really damaging part of all of this is that your reps are now going to be spending most of their time in those deals that they don't win. And so now you've got really ineffective reps that aren't optimizing their time well, aren't efficient, or are spending time in deals they don't close. And the cost of that is really big because now they're not deploying that time into deals they can actually win. And so understanding deal management well and having a really good deal management process is absolutely critical, even more so than now when pipeline is quite scarce. You've got to close the deals you have in your pipeline. Once you do that, you can build repeatability. And now actually when you build your pipeline, you can start to build pipeline that looks like the deals you're closing rather than just kind of let's build pipeline, which I think is the narrative I'm hearing a lot at the moment. And typically when I look at any pipeline, there's probably 40% of that pipeline that will never close. There's 30% of that pipeline that has a good chance, but we don't know when, and we need to do a lot of work on it. And then there's 30% of the pipeline that I would call is commit ready, which is, I think, I'm confident we're going to get this closed. And I'm optimistic we can do it when we think we can. Right now, if that's the case, that means in every pipeline, there are 30% of deals currently that have a good chance of closing when you think they will. That's just not good enough. That 30% in the middle of those opportunities that are real, there's some intent, but we just don't have enough visibility of where that customer is in their journey, or there's lots of things going on, is where I would focus my time. That's the first thing, and that's deal management. And there's lots of things you can do to move those deals through. So, can we get access to more people in that buying team? Who's actually influencing this deal? Who's not signing this off? Who's influencing it? Is there a committee of people? Let's find them. Let's show value to everyone in that buying committee. What are their use cases? What are they looking to get from this? And probably everybody's looking for something different. What are the outcomes they're looking for? How's that going to change their life? Let's show that we can deliver that value and that outcome to every single one of those influencers. Let's help educate them on the areas they're stuck on, right? So really invest time in expanding that stakeholder team and offering value to them. That's the first thing. Second is level selling. It's in your organization. It's making sure that everybody in your company in the right roles are linking in and connecting with the right people in your buying committees and your buying teams. That's going to help for sure. And then I think it's just really understanding where the buyer is on their journey and not putting pressure on them. Enable them to buy the way that they want to at the pace they want to. Don't put that added pressure on them. Just help them, make it easier for them to evaluate you, to go through their own process, to get comfortable that they're doing the right things, and then have a very strong kind of sense as to whether you are going to be vendor of choice in this or not. And if you don't think you are, you can just back out and focus on other deals. So I think deal management, massively important. To answer your second part of your question, how do we move deals through the pipeline once they're in there? I think it's at top of the funnel, right? It's about qualifying. It's about making sure leads have got intent. What are they coming through for? What's the pain they're looking to solve? Is it urgent? Is there a big risk that if they don't solve it, there's a massive cost or compliance issue or a revenue loss issue? What are they up against that means they've got to buy this? Are they looking to build as well as buy? So is that a consideration, right? Because often in big enterprise deals, big larger organizations will look to build internally. but also look to assess the market and evaluate whether it's worth building or buying. Understand that. Make sure you've got buying authority on the call. One thing that we do is we don't take a second call unless we've got buying authority access. We literally say we need that, and we're very explicit about it. And I think it works, and it helps, and it really shows intent. And it just basically means that when you have an opportunity that you put into a pipeline stage, there's a reason for it, right? It's not that they've downloaded a white paper and now they're a good lead. It's not that they've, one person sat in Kuala Lumpur has come through from a multi-billion-dollar organization to say they're interested. They've got no buying authority and they're just, kind of fishing around for something that's going to make their life easier, but the company have no appetite for doing anything. I see so many deals like that. And if you qualify well and you have a very kind of robust qualifying criteria, it should help you bring the right deals through. And then it becomes about deal management, and then you should better close more.
Makes sense. And it seems like the onus for qualifying those deals and pushing those deals through pipeline is obviously on the AE, the person that is in front of the buyer, that is managing those deals. There obviously is some type of disconnect between, say, sales leaders and their ability to enable their AEs to do some of the tactics that you mentioned there, level selling, qualifying deals properly, understanding intent and engagement. There's obviously a disconnect between enabling those AEs to do that. For a sales leader listening to this, what would you recommend for them that they could implement within their sales team to enable their AEs to do more of this more easily?
Yeah, so I think they've got to get around their own organization, and they've got to rally people that are like key stakeholders in their own companies, typically CFO, CEO, CMO, CPO, all the key areas that they're selling into, right? Legal, to rally round and lean in and help their go-to-market approach. So that strategy is, here's a list of 20 people that we're looking to sell into, or 20 companies we're looking to sell into. I'd love you to connect on LinkedIn with your peer in those companies. Don't do anything else. Don't reach out. You haven't got to have conversations with them. Just connect with them. But to do that, you need to have the gravitas inside your own organization to be able to get people to do it. Particularly if you're in a larger company with hundreds of people rather than tens, that might be more challenging. But it's very, very important that you can do that. And I think it's part of a sales leader's role. The other is to lead from the front. It's, it's almost, don't rely on your sales reps to do the heavy lifting, help them, a sales leader, VP title, CRO title, has a level of authority that they can use and influence that they can use externally to help their sales reps get access to the right people. When they offer value, when they educate, it's listened to more than potentially an AE trying to sell to them is. So I think sales leaders should be very proactive. They should be supporting that go-to-market motion with their sales teams. And then I think just, the other thing is just making sure that everybody's set up well. You want to make it really easy for your prospects to buy from you. If you're selling mid-market to enterprise, so let's say, 25K upwards, you're not typically, in most cases, you're not going to get a buyer putting that on their credit card and making the decision on their own. They're going to have a committee of people that they need to talk to. They want to come in and assess. They're going to have to get that signed off as a budget line. And they're probably going to be talking to 3 or 4 other vendors, your competitors as well. So if you sit in that buyer's seat, they're not a professional buyer, but they now need to buy some software. They're going to talk to 3 or 4 companies. They're going to get information, materials, emails back and forth. They're going to get harassed and chased and, by 3 or 4 different companies. If you can be the one that differentiates by actually making it easy for them to do business with you and to evaluate you, it's proven. I've seen it time and time again, particularly, with Dealpad, that you will win those deals. You'll become vendor of choice much more frequently. And I think the sales leader has an onus to instill that type of behavior and process in their team if they're running a mid to enterprise motion. It will help massively.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned there, obviously, we covered quite a lot of tactics for sellers and sales leaders to influence the buying team and reach decision makers, and tactics to push deals through pipeline, right? But all of that is under the premise of being able to spot deals that are about to get stuck or are stalling, right? Mm-hmm. So in your experience growing Dealpad and the deals that you're working on with your team as a go-to-market leader yourself, what are some of the red flags that stick out to you most when looking at your pipeline in predicting what deals could stall, which ones are going to get stuck, and, I guess, how can sales leaders intervene to keep the momentum up?
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, there's probably many, but there's a few that I track. I think one is age of deal in each stage. And so typically if you model out your deals, so let's say 20 to 50K, 50 to 150, 150 to 300, let's say 300 plus, right? If you take those four different groups of deal sizes and you model out how long they stay in each stage of your pipeline before you move it through, you model out how many stakeholders do we typically see? When do they appear? At what point in the process? Who are they? What type of roles do they have? What questions do they ask? And if you become very formulaic about that, actually you can now spot gaps really, really fast, because you can now say, well, this particular deal has been in this stage 40 days longer than the average that we close. And we normally see these two people and we haven't seen them yet. And, we're always asked that question at this point, why aren't they even asking us this yet? And so that would very quickly enable me as a sales leader to understand and forecast and predict if that deal is likely to close. That's the first indicator that I think that it's easy to just look back historically and build out your framework for what it looks like when you close a deal and apply that to deals in the pipeline. The other is we use mutual action plans. And so a mutual action plan enables the buyer and the seller to align on all the tasks that need to occur in order for the buyer to evaluate you. And within that, you have people and you have dates assigned to each task. That's a really easy one. It's very rudimentary to kind of just look at and say, oh, well, that task has slipped. We missed that date, or this person has declined this call, or, we haven't got anybody assigned to this particular task here at the moment on the buyer's side. If you start to see things like that, it's a really strong indicator that this deal isn't going to close when you think it will. And if you start to model that out over the course of a few months forward, you can say, well, this is going to close in January. We're now in October. We've missed 3 key tasks here. The chances are we're not going to get this done, or we need to rally and we need to pick these 3 things up. Now there's a priority for those 3 tasks. Let's get them in, let's get them done, and let's get this back on track. So it helps me keep that deal, in play on time, or it helps me understand we're probably not going to get ourselves there. The worst of it all is when you're not doing those types of things and you're not using mutual action plans, you're not aligning with your buyers, and you think this is going really well, and then you get a left field at the 11th hour, I didn't realize that we have to go to a buying committee. I didn't realize we need a business plan. Can you help me write one? Or, this happened to me. I was in and this happened to me like 3 or 4 years ago. So there's no excuse for this happening based on everything I've just said to you. And it remains one of the most frustrating things that's ever happened to me as a sales leader. I was a CRO of a company and we were talking to a prospect for about a year. We had what I thought was buying authority and all of the key C-suite, apart from the CEO, at the table. We had numerous meetings in person. They were based in Munich, in Germany. And I've been over there like 4 times personally. So we'd invested a huge amount of time over that year. And we were getting our contract redlined by legal. So for me, this was commit. This was, we're going to do this now. It's in. We've been close to the buying team. We've had access to everybody we need. And then the CEO of one of our biggest competitors managed in the background, well, say in the background, not in his background, but in our background, to call the CEO of the company. And they became really good friends. And the CEO of the company vetoed using us and a year's worth of work and mandated that they gave a POC to this competitor, which then meant they couldn't sign the deal with us. And the POC was for 6 months, which so then all of a sudden a deal that we thought was going to close in 4 or 5 weeks, we knew now we weren't going to get done for at least 6 months. And ultimately we didn't win the deal. And so, you know, when you think you've got everybody at the table, think again. And almost you need to have the CEO there, because ultimately the CEO is going to make the final decision. Or if they don't make the final decision, they can veto things. And I learned that. And we were using a mutual action plan. We were, you know, everything was aligned. I was confident on this one. But what we didn't have was the CEO. And ultimately, without being in the process, because they'd never been in the process, they vetoed everything for us. And so that was a big lesson. But so I think that look out for that one.
Yeah. I guess using mutual action plans and going back to the point that you just mentioned and breaking your deals up into those very specific formulaic tasks and individuals that you know that you need to access, being able to flag which ones are overdue, which ones are coming up, can also elevate the conversations that you have with buyers in that they can now understand a depiction of what this looks like for us on the timeline that, say, if we want to get something implemented by X, like, what does this look like? And it gives you a good, I guess, push out of all of the different things and how this affects that one overdue task affects the entire process, just for you, but for them.
Yeah, exactly. And there are also two kind of untapped powers of a mutual action plan, in my opinion. One is that the buyers don't engage in it. You can very quickly establish there's not intent there. Because if there is intent and they are going through a process of evaluating you, then they will engage with you in it, align with you, because it's easier for them. They will share with you the tasks that need to happen. They will ask things of you. And if they're not doing those things, then I think there's clearly no intent. So mutual action plans can actually help you stop wasting time in deals that you probably won't win. And I think on the other side, the untapped potential for a mutual action plan is the onboarding. And so what you can now do is you can show a customer in pre-sales, before you've even signed the contract, what it's like to work with you by mapping out all the things that are going to happen once they sign that contract. So if you have an onboarding process and you have training, you have integrations, you have, you know, lots of materials you want to share with your buyers, you have customer success meetings and setup, you can put it all into your mutual action plan and share that with your buying team before you sign the deal. And that adds a huge amount of confidence to the buyer that you're organized, that you're structured, that you've got a great process and you're really good to work with.
Yeah, it's a great tag team for anyone against listening. And for anyone listening, we've got a mutual action plan template for anyone kind of wanting to look into using mutual action templates or using mutual action plans in general within the deals if you're not already. So it goes without saying, anything that we speak about in this podcast or anything that Adam's mentioned, previous war stories, all that sort of stuff, is going to be in the description of this podcast and video. Thinking about the companies that you've scaled, multiple companies that you've scaled and built as CEO, and looking back at your early days as being kind of, you know, new to entrepreneurship and building companies from the top, right? What was one mistake that you made in those early days that fundamentally changed how you approach specifically scaling sales teams, the go-to-market function, and growth strategies in general?
I didn't look for repeatability enough. And I think that's the most important thing. You know, I was just quite happy to do deals, get revenue on the table. And I wasn't thinking about, can we replicate this? So like, when you looked at our customers, they were all different in sizes, different types, different use cases, different value outcomes. Everything was different. And which way do you go then? If I want my next customer, where do I go and get them? Because now I've got 20 customers or 100 customers. They're all different. Like, and so I think that if you double down on your ICP and be very, very intentional about working with that group of companies, and almost don't deviate from it, even though it's tempting, what you will find very quickly is that that's either a very good market fit for you or it's not. If it's not, then you just iterate and you move into another segment, expand it, go to the vertical, try and find an ICP that's maybe a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller, whatever. But if it does work, just go out and find another 100 customers like the ones you're already working with. And you'll find then that you know how to make them successful. You know what to say to them to get them excited. You know what their pain is you're solving. And you know how to deliver value. It's a much easier process. So I think that would be the one thing. It saves a lot of time.
Amazing. To wrap up, Adam, for anyone listening that are managing their own deals, what would you say would be kind of an unconventional tactic or approach to close deals that people typically overlook?
Pick the phone up. I think today, look, there aren't many conversations happening. We record our calls here at Dealpad and we make a lot of calls. And I hear so often the people we're selling to say, this is the first call I've had in 2 years, talk to you. And I think that bizarrely has become a differentiator for good salespeople now. Pick the phone up and actually have conversations with people. Don't rely on automation. Have these personalized conversations. I think the other thing to do is to interview your buyer. Don't be afraid to ask them lots of questions and, close them for their intent and the chain they're looking to solve. And keep doing the why. Get to the bottom of exactly what their pain is and why it's important for them.
Great tactic. I think people forget that, and at least on LinkedIn, from what I'm seeing, a lot of people focus on cold calls lead gen, whereas the phone is still there throughout pipeline, throughout every single stage of pipeline. I don't think enough people talk and advocate for calling strategies in pipeline, the deals that you're trying to close.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, one thing, and we discovered this recently, we won a customer that had been in our pipeline for a couple of years. And, we didn't spend much time on them, but we kept offering value to them throughout that period. So maybe once a quarter, we'd reach out, check in, how's it going? We'd share a few things we'd seen. We'd share a document that we thought would be valuable to them. We'd, like a couple of them posted, might have written on LinkedIn or, we were just there. And when they were ready to buy, which, wasn't on our timeline, we thought we were going to get that closed, 18 months before that, they came back to us and they've signed when they're ready. And that's great. And so I think another tactic for AEs is to not completely abandon prospects that aren't ready to buy from you right now. Find a way of offering value to them until they're ready to buy. And when they're ready to buy, they'll come to you. Also, the value you offer through that period might actually entice them to buy. It might bring them closer to being ready.
Adam, really appreciate you taking the time. As mentioned before, anyone listening that wants to get more information about Adam, Dealpad, strategy plan template, and all those other things that we've spoken about in this podcast, it'll all be in the description below. To finally wrap up, Adam, do you have any final parting comments, anything that you want to leave the audience with?
I just think that sales is difficult and we just need to realize that we don't close deals. The buyer closes the deal. So what can we do to make it easy for the buyer? How can we make it easy for them to buy from us? Like, I would just encourage everyone to think about that question, because the closer you can get to answering that, the more deals you'll close.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Adam.
And what, brilliant, pleasure, mate.
Yeah, and for all those listening, we'll see you next week. Cheers.